You know, when we talk about India in 2050, we're not just talking about a different country. We're talking about a different world, really. The scale of the change on the horizon is like nothing we've ever seen in human history. So what's it going to take to build this new India? And what will it even look like? Let's dive in.
First, let's just try to get our heads around the human scale of this. By 2050, India's population is expected to hit 1.7 billion people. Think about that. That's not just a number on a page, it's a whole new center of gravity for humanity. So the real question is, how do you support, house, and create opportunity for that many people all at once?
And all those people, in their homes, in their cities, at their jobs, they're going to need power. Lots of it. We're looking at a four-fold increase in on-grid electricity demand by 2050. And you can't just meet that by building more of the same. No, this calls for a complete revolution in how the country makes and uses its energy.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get our heads around this new scale of growth. Then, we'll hit the three big pillars: what's happening with work, how India is going to power itself, and what its farms and cities will look like. After that, we'll look at a potential blueprint for all this change. And we'll wrap up with the biggest question of all. Is this a future that includes everyone?
All right, first up, understanding this new scale. And really, we have to grapple with the fact that this is growth on a level we've never seen before in human history. We're not talking about slow and steady. We're talking about a total national reinvention happening at lightning speed.
Look, nobody has a crystal ball, right? But one thing is for sure, massive change is coming. And what's really key to remember, as a lot of these reports point out, is that this isn't just about challenges. There's huge opportunity here. The future isn't just something you have to brace for, it's something you get to build.
Okay, so this whole transformation, it really begins with people. And the big question for India's new economy is, well, how are 1.7 billion people going to make a living when technology is literally changing the very definition of a job?
This quote from Stephen Hawking it hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The same tech that makes us more productive could also create this massive divide, and that becomes the central tightrope India has to walk on its way to 2050.
And here's the real paradox, right? The two sides of the same coin. On one hand, you have a World Bank study saying that a massive chunk of jobs, maybe up to 69% in India, are at risk from automation. But at the very same time, that same tech is creating this whole new on-demand economy. Think about it. A huge, growing freelance workforce that isn't tied to a traditional 9-to-5.
So, what does this mean for the worker of the future? Well, you're not going to be competing with a robot on an assembly line. That's a losing game. Instead, you'll thrive by leaning into the things machines just can't do, at least not yet. We're talking about creativity, deep analysis, and real problem solving. This is where we get this idea of the Uberization of labor, A world full of micro-entrepreneurs and remote teams that come together just in time to tackle a specific project and then dissolve.
Right. But this entire digital, high-tech economy, it runs on one thing: electricity. And powering a nation of 1.7 billion people with all their smart factories and data centers, well, that is going to take an energy revolution on a scale we've never, ever seen.
And the price tag? It's absolutely staggering. An institute called TERI estimates that India will need up to $1.6 trillion by 2050. Let that sink in. Trillion. And that's just for new power plants and storage. It's a historic build-out.
So where's all that money going to go? Coal? Gas? Well, the answer is actually driven by some pretty simple economics. Take a look at this. By 2030, the cost of solar power, when you pair it with battery storage, is expected to be cheaper than power from a brand new coal plant. So it's not just about policy or climate change anymore. The economics are pointing straight towards renewables.
Okay, but there's a catch, right? If you're relying on the sun and the wind, what happens when the sun goes down or the wind stops blowing? The answer is a much smarter grid, and the key ingredient is energy storage. We're talking massive batteries and other tech that will work like giant reservoirs, soaking up all that extra solar energy during the day and then releasing it at night to keep the lights on 24/7.
Okay, so you've got new kinds of work, new kinds of energy, but all of this has to happen in the real world, in a physical space. And that brings us to the very foundation of the nation,
its farms and its cities. How on earth do you feed and house 1.7 billion people?
And it's really a tale of two different landscapes transforming at the same time. On one side, you have the farm of the future. We're talking high-tech, data-driven agriculture to feed everyone. And on the other, you have the megacity, which is supposed to be the engine of all this economic growth. But here's the thing. Reports show that India's move to the cities has been surprisingly sluggish. It's like the engine is sputtering.
So, why is the engine sputtering? What's the bottleneck? Well, a lot of researchers, like Rakesh Mohan, point to a real crisis in how cities are governed. You see, in a lot of India's biggest cities, the mayor is more of a ceremonial figure. The real power is with the commissioner, who's appointed by the state and can be transferred out at a moment's notice. How can you possibly build a long-term vision for a modern megacity with that kind of system?
All right, so we've got a workforce in flux, huge energy needs, and cities that are struggling to keep pace. So how do you fix all of these interconnected problems at once? Let's walk through the four-part blueprint that comes out of these reports.
The strategy is really about attacking all these problems at the same time. You can't just fix one. First, you have to empower city governments, give them real authority. Step 2, you have to massively upskill the workforce for the jobs that are actually coming. Step 3, you need to pour those trillions into the right places, renewable energy, modern infrastructure, and finally, step 4, you have to push for sustainability everywhere, from the farm to the factory floor.
But here's the thing. Even if you have the perfect plan, the most brilliant blueprint, there is one huge unanswered question that hangs over all of this. This incredible transformation is happening, but who is it really for?
This quote from the Intel Cap report just lays the stakes out so clearly. If we don't actively work to prevent it, we face the risk of a growing gap of rising class struggles. This whole transformation, it's going to create massive wealth and opportunity, for sure, but it could just as easily leave millions and millions of people behind, creating a giant chasm between those who benefit and those who are left out.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? The path to 2050 is absolutely paved with incredible potential. But whether it leads to inclusive prosperity for 1.7 billion people or a deeply divided two-tiered society, that will be determined by the choices India makes starting right now.